Good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of August 25th, 2016 is called to order. I'd like to thank everyone for their patience in this, but luckily we're able to get it rolling and continue on. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting. Please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the front door. It looks like this. And hand it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards, also located at the front table, and then submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. This will be roll call. Mr. Malikian?
Here.
Mr. Charchian?
Here.
Mr. Benlian?
Here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on August 18, 2016. We need to elect a chairman pro tem for tonight's meeting. Do we have any nominations?
I'll go ahead and nominate Mr. Charchian.
I'll second that.
Roll call, Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Mr. Benlian?
Yes.
Okay. And staff's knowledge, there's no oral communications. So we have 4 cases on today's schedule. Mr. Chairman?
Sure, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that is here to speak on a matter that is not on the calendar today? Seeing none, closing oral communications, opening up our first case. PDR 16108 63, 1680 Valley View Road. Can we get the staff's report?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Pro Tem and Design Review Board members, this case is located at 1680 Valley View Road. It's an application to construct a new single-family dwelling on a hillside lot. The application was reviewed as a final review in September of 2015, and the Design Review Board's decision at the time was for return for redesign with 5 conditions. The present application has handled some of the conditions, and some conditions have not been met, and we've discussed this in the staff report, and the project is in front of you for discussion and the decision. In a nutshell, the conditions required by the Design Review Board at the last meeting are discussed towards the end of the staff report. Condition 1 was to reduce the length of the driveway and shift the mass of the house in order to reduce the amount of grading in that area. The length of the driveway has been reduced. Initially, the plans are on the board behind you. The new perspective is on the board at the top right corner. The prior perspective, for comparison purposes, is on the panel to the right. The reduced plans, both the revised project and the prior project, have been distributed to the board members for comparison and review. The large set of old plans are available here in case we need to review them.
Excuse me, can you explain which part it has been reduced?
Yeah.
Of the driveway?
Let me come up.
I could not find that.
So I'm going to go through the conditions and explain
And
what happened.
Can just show it, yeah.
That's right. Let me get my bearing for a moment. Okay. This is the driveway coming up the hill, and it's a common driveway. This is the driveway portion that serves the house. The prior plan had a deeper driveway, a covered driveway, and then the garage door was located somewhere back here. The board's direction was to reduce this covered driveway, shift some habitable area over it, shift the house further closer to the hill to reduce the amount of grading in the hills against the hillside. This was the bulk of the first condition. Now, the revised project, the driveway length has been reduced. The house has been shifted towards the hillside, is nestled more against the hillside. So this has possibly reduced some of the grading in this area. However, what we've noted is the following in this condition. The garage is a 3-car garage. The third inner space does not comply with our size requirements. And in order to widen this space, that would imply some additional grading. And what we also noted is the overall amount of grading that has been reported to us by the applicant is larger. So that, when added to the increased grading here, the required increase in the grading here, would further increase the total amount of grading. And one additional note that would be part of this condition, or would have an impact on this condition, is the following. On and off, we've discussed a pool with the applicant. The drawings as they came in do not show a pool. If a pool were to be proposed at a later time, that would further have an impact on the amount of grading. Let me move on to the second condition that was required by the board, and that is to reduce significantly the square footage of the house and to possibly provide a split-level floor plan. The floor area of the house has been reduced from 4,899 square feet to 4,035 square feet. And we think that the house has been reduced substantially to make it more compatible with the hillside design guidelines. The other thing that I discussed briefly with in the first condition is to shift the house, to nestle it into the hillside to the north and northeast, and this has been accomplished also. Condition 3 related to the decks. The board at the last meeting concurred with staff that the decks were too big and the cantilevers from the proposed decks should be removed and the decks reduced in size, in extent. The decks have been reduced somewhat, but staff thinks not enough. The cantilevers have been removed, and the deck, per the direction of the board, has been divided into 2 levels, which we can see on the floor plan or the site plan. There are two deck areas that have a different level, floor level. A related condition from the board, that's condition number 4, was to eliminate the railing from the decks, the railings that you can see in the perspective. Now the 2 decks, one has remnants of railing together with piers, and the second deck area has a continuous parapet wall around it. Staff's observation is that the piers with the railing is not consistent with the board's direction, and that the white stone caps further accentuate the railing or further accentuate the flat deck. And the second part of the deck still has that white cap, and it's still accentuated. And staff concurs with the initial board's direction to replace the railing and the walls with probably like a two-tier planter to reduce from the visual impact. The fifth condition from the board related to landscaping, and the board wanted confirmation that the landscaping was appropriately selected and designed for the slope. The applicant has inserted a note on the landscape plan that the landscape materials have been selected specifically for this site. Having said all this, staff's recommendation is for approval with conditions. There are two conditions that are remnants from the past review relating to the decks, to shrink the size of the decks and to replace the railing and the walls with planters. So those are two conditions. And two additional conditions. One relates to the code required third garage space, that the garage space has to be increased in size to comply. And a fourth condition relates to locating mechanical equipment on the plans at the plan check level. Mechanical equipment has not been shown on the plan, and the condition requires that it be shown. Having said all this, I would like to add, I'd like to mention that we got letters from neighbors and through the applicant. We distinguished between the two and we distributed them to the board members with two different headings. And I would like to conclude my staff presentation unless there are questions from the board.
Actually, I do have a question. On your design analysis, when it says under building location, you explain there that it talks about about the building and stepping and the profile and all that, and then at the last paragraph or last sentence it says, despite attempts to revise the design of the decks since the last ERB meeting, staff believes that an intended condition number 4 has not been met. So, but on before that statement, you're talking about the terracing hillside and other things. So my question is, the building location, based on that comment, do you believe that it has met, and do you think that they have made a substantial change from, because I can't honestly tell the difference between the old one and the new one, to be honest with you, unless you come out and pinpoint. I mean, I had to put these two plans together to understand, and with even this statement, do you feel that they have met the conditions?
Staff thinks there was an attempt, there was a change in relocating the building and nestling it more into the hillside. If that extent is not sufficient, we leave that to the board, but we think there was an effort, there was a change. And staff's opinion is that the decks still don't meet the intent, but the house is compliant.
Yeah, we had hoped that there would be some terracing of the decks that we still haven't seen that would allow that area to follow the topography more closely. But the push, and I can see in these renderings it's a little hard to see, but and you can ask the architect about that, but the house was moved closer into the hill in a way that we thought helped follow your condition.
If I may point out, in this perspective, some of that discussion is visible. This was a deck separating, with a retaining wall separating the house from the hillside. This has been eliminated and the house shifted.
Yeah. Chris, do you have something that shows the two driveways next to each other? Do we have on the old one?
I would have to dig up that plan.
I have them here, if you want to look at it.
Some of it is
You
visible
have it
in
in the
this.
packet. Look at
Some of it is visible in this perspective. This has the depth of probably one car or so before you get to the garage door. So the garage door has been moved forward, closer to the front.
So it's the same massing, but
It's the same concept, but some excavation has been reduced because of reducing the depth from here. If you wish, we have the old plan available. I can dig it up.
it's fine.
We distributed
all set in
Yeah.
the packet.
Are there any other questions for staff? Okay. Do you have any more questions for staff? No? Okay. All right, seeing no other further questions for staff, I'd like to open up the public portion of the hearing by asking the architect to come up. And then looks like there is ownership as well. So we're going to limit it to about 10 minutes since we had a late start, if that's okay.
10 minutes.
Mr. Hagopian, yes. Please state your name and
Edward
address for the
Hagopian,
record.
220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. That's my address. I'm the architect of this project. We think that we have done some changes, and we have reduced the length of the driveway. Now, that one-car garage, after we submitted that later, very late, I recognized that we have to make it maybe 1.5 feet wider. If I'm right, just 1.5 feet. That will add to the grading something like about maybe 10 to 15 cubic yards, 10 to 12 cubic yards, not a significant change. We have reduced the size of the house significantly. And from 4,000, almost 900, we have gone down to 4,035. By the time we take out that square footages of the garage lower level, that adds to the square foot. In fact, the house is 3,868 square foot. However, 4,035 even is about 870 square foot smaller than the original proposed house. We pushed the house toward the back of the property, and that wall is an impact wall now. It used to be, we had a grading there, we had a retaining wall there, and that is gone, and the dirt touches the building on the back. So in the first floor, that if we had some windows in lower level, we don't have that anymore. By the way, I have a list of the people who are supporting this project, of neighbors. The yellow ones are the supporting, and pink ones are the ones that object. I would like to give it.
Okay.
So of that 13 letters that we have, they have sent it to city. 11 of these letters that are immediate neighbors of this project, they support this project. Other than that, I talked to Larry Tyson, the landscape architect, and he said made some changes, and says good enough to respond to your correction. Now, if the deck is, this house needs a little bit of space, and because the whole rest of the lot is slope, a little bit of space for the gatherings of the family. And we left a space that in future can be a pool. And in the previous design, we have continuous railing. Now we have divisions of pieces. If you see the difference in the perspective, you can see that. Now, Mr. Melikian is talking about articulation or stepping. We have added that, not very significantly, but between the living room and the family room, there are 4 steps that it's split level. And by the way, we have eliminated, if you see in the old one, this is completely gone. I'm showing with this. May I approach?
The pointer is...
Pointer under the TV here.
This doesn't exist anymore. This is what was recommended by Design Review Board, and we took this and put it inside that.
The windows don't exist, or the
No, this
terracing?
this mass doesn't exist.
Okay. Does the terrace exist?
The terraces were cantilevered, in fact. My understanding was that because we have cantilevered the terraces by 10 feet out, now we pushed it back now. We don't have any cantilever now. Everything is retaining wall, and it doesn't have that kind of feeling of that the terrace is encroaching in the area.
So, Mr. Hagopian, I'm going to direct you to the picture above that one that you just pointed to. So you're saying that cantilever effect.
We don't have that cantilever anymore.
So this is all gone. So do you have a rendering that shows that this is gone?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. And in this rendering, that other terrace is also gone, the one that's in front of that
It's
mass?
smaller, smaller and terraced, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I would like to mention that the slope of this lot is in a way that is not a uniform slope going from one point going up. It goes up, then it comes down. So we try to have articulation as much as we could. If a slope is in one direction going from, let's say, perpendicular to the depth of the lot, we can do more articulation, but this goes up and then the other side comes down. And we tried our best to see if we can create that articulation as much as possible.
Mr. Hagopian, I have a question. You're referring to the slope going up. Is that portion that goes up, that kind of goes up to a berm, is that fill from what you know?
I don't think so.
Okay.
By the way, one of the complaining neighbors is referring that this is a house to build and sell, and no, the owner is not in that business. He will explain for you that this is, he has 5 kids, and this is for his kids, and this is not for commercial work.
I have a question.
Yes.
So it seems like the cubic yards has increased the export and the cut and fill.
Yes.
So my question is, and I'm trying to understand the plans. Your basement, which it was eliminated with the rec room and the office, and then also you took out one of the garage spaces. Also, you've taken out all the retaining walls on the side. So all of those have been taken out. Where does that increase in the grading come about?
Yeah,
I mean, you've reduced the deck, you've reduced that, so there shouldn't be a reduction.
I knew that you will ask this question. Our setback from the property line used to be 10 plus, I believe, another 5-6 feet. Now we have pushed the house all the way to 10 feet setback. And because of that, we are deeper in the dirt, so we are cutting more dirt there.
I'm not sure I understand. I thought that you're set with. Can you show us that?
I think he means in the back over here. Now the house is closer to the hill, so more carving.
See this backyard here?
Right.
We don't have this anymore. What we were doing, we were grading from here, coming gradually down,
Got it.
and putting another retaining wall,
Got it.
and take this whole dirt out.
Understood. But you're not doing that anymore.
We are not doing, but then the house is moved to, let's say the dirt is here. Further we move it, deeper we go into the dirt.
But you moved the entire house instead of moving the upper level.
No, entire house. We moved entire house towards that depth of the dirt.
Okay. Mr. Hagopian, do you have any other comments or questions?
Any questions?
Questions for the board? The board, sorry. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hagopian. Before I call the next speaker, there was a little bit of confusion earlier as to whether or not I was going to participate in this portion of the hearing. And so for the record, I want to explain why, in case there's an inquiry down the road. Mr. Karapetian, Nabil Karapetian, who was the applicant and the owner of the lot, has children that go to the same school as I do, my kids. and we have been to one or two birthday parties of other children where we've been in attendance, and Mr. Karapetian has been in attendance. And additionally, years ago, I think 7 or 8 years ago, I attempted to buy a lot on Valley View. That purchase was not successful. I have checked with city officials, and they have indicated that is not a bar as long as I can remain objective on the project. I assure you I can remain objective, and that's why I've decided to participate in the meeting and not recuse myself. And with that on the record, I can go ahead and ask Mr. Karapetian to come up to the podium and make his comments. Thank you.
I'm surprised to see you tonight, honestly. Good evening, board member. My name is Nabil Karapetian. I'm the owner of the 1680 Valley View. I'm a businessman who own a food distributor company. We have a food distribution. I don't know if you're aware. You have seen it on the freeway. My family and I being resident in Glendale since 1994, and I live in 1700 Valley View. I am not a developer, as Mr. Hakopian mentioned. I'm a family man with 5 children. I have 21. I have Isabel, 19 years old. I have 18 years old, and I have Victoria and Sophia. So I have 5 children. My intention is to keep the family in Glendale, for Glendale, and that's our Glendale generation to come. So I have no intention to sell this home. It's going to be for one of my children. So there's no intention. I'm not a developer. I have a business. I can invest my money in my business instead of develop and sell. I never happen. I have the Valley View 1700 since 7 years. I never thought to sell it. So I do thank you for taking time to listen to me and to consider my project. Your approval is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Mr. Or I shouldn't say Mr. Lee Strauss. It is Mr. Lee Strauss.
Hello. I was here back in August, and I think that you guys are looking at this in a bit of a vacuum because.
Before you go on, you need to state your name and address.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Lee Strauss. I live at 1651 Cumberland Terrace. I'm an attorney. I'm also representing Frank and Roxanne Chung, who live at 1655 Cumberland Terrace, and Robert and Taylene Terusian, who live at 1665 Cumberland Terrace.
Okay, Mr. Strauss, when you say representing, are you representing them in a legal capacity as their attorney or
just as their interests? Yes, they're not available to be here.
Okay, thank you.
So we were here back in August, and quite frankly, I had just moved into the neighborhood earlier that year. I'm a little bit more well-versed now in all of this. I think it's interesting that the applicant, and the first picture here is page 1, is where the applicant currently lives, which is 1700, which is what we affectionately deem the concrete jungle above us. And I think if you look through the photos here, you'll see what is being proposed and the size and what this is going to do to the neighborhood. The square footage is approximately 38% greater than the average size home, 300 linear feet to the subject property of 2,900 square feet. If you look at the plans, The decking itself that they're proposing, that they've just been talking about, is 2,600 square feet, which isn't even part of the roughly 4,000 square feet of living space that's being proposed here. So their deck is roughly 10% less than the average home size in this area. If you look at the hillside design guidelines themselves, I think that when you look at scale and proportion, the scale and proportion of a project should be designed to fit well within the surrounding context, even if it is overall size is larger. This property does not do that. Overscale or two-story monumental entries are discouraged. Clearly, this is like way beyond what that would say. The color of this is not going to fit well within the hillside and the natural terrain that all of us bought homes in this area for. One of the largest concerns that all of us have is, and I think that's why I wanted you to look at some of these photos, especially when you look at page 6, 7, and 8, is this hillside is a living and breathing hillside. And I can tell you that a blue jay lands on the dirt on our hillside that backs up against our property, and debris falls. And the same is true for the Chungs, and the same is true for the Tarusians. We are extremely concerned with the topography and what this structure would potentially do to the hillside on a daily basis. Putting some sort of foundation like this in, the vibrations, all of what will take to cut out for what they want to do is going to be a detriment to not only the neighborhood, but to that hillside, and I think that is a big problem. This is a massive structure for a small plot of land, and that's exactly what the Design Review Board said in August. And by the staff's own admission of there were attempts made and they didn't meet the conditions that were given by the Design Review Board,
Yeah.
we would
Mr.
say
Tuss,
on
I'm going to
behalf...
stop you. I think Mr. Collins forgot to put on the timer.
It went off already.
Oh, it went off already. Completely. I'm sorry. I must be off today. I apologize. For an inch of time, I'm going to
I'll conclude just by saying, on behalf of the 3 homeowners below this property, we vehemently ask this board to deny this project and to send it back. If they want to go third time a charm at reducing the size of this, that's what we would ask the board to do.
Thank you very much. Gary Gerwick.
Good evening. I'm Gary Garnick. I am a homeowner on Cumberland Terrace also. I'm on the east side of Cumberland, so I face the property. And our side of the street have a name for 1700 Valley View. We call it the Mothership. It is a very large, imposing building that you can see from many parts of Glendale, and the color just reflects light also. I mean, it is a terracotta. I guess it could be considered organic, but when the light hits it, it just glows during the day. But that's that property. But the color is very similar, and again, you can't tell from these drawings, but the hillside's extremely steep, and the posts that they have put up and the flags to mark the construction is coming, it's over the top of the hill, but it's coming down the hill. So the house is, compared to the other homes that are up there, are much further east. I guess it would be east. And it just seems like the house is kind of falling off the front of the hillside. And the size, again, the deck looks just enormous. It's about the size of most of the homes on Cumberland Terrace and in that whole neighborhood facing that property. And again, our property is very similar. The hillside's not real stable. It's decomposing granite, and it's stable, but anything that goes on it comes down. I was watching the men put the posts up on this property that's being proposed, and you could see things fall down. Plus, they were throwing their water bottles and cans that I can see reflecting still on the hillside. It takes a long time for it to come down, and it will come down on their property. And the stability of whose liability is it if it does go forward to the homeowners below? If there's erosion in a couple of years, or it's just this very large property on a very small lot. And the lot is actually the buildable part, as you can see on this illustration on the third down. It's like a hairpin turn on that road. So they're building, the whole lot isn't buildable because they're building on the east side of the driveway, the common driveway, and it's a flag lot. So they're putting this big house on a very small percentage of the lot that they own, that they purchased. It just needs to be much smaller, I believe. And I'm against. It looks like a lovely house, but maybe not for that site.
Thank you. Ellie Polychronis. On Pacific Avenue? No? Okay. Theodore Polychronis? Okay, so we have two speakers that not here. Any other people wishing to speak can come up and speak and fill out a card later? No? Seeing none. Let's go ahead and close. Yeah, for rebuttal, is the applicant going to rebut or Mr. Hagopian? 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Yes. Regarding the size of the house, this will be third largest house in that 300-foot linear distance. So the visibility of this house is not the way that objecting people are exaggerating. It is very secluded from the view, maybe looking from, let's say, a distance of from Mountain Avenue, maybe you will see maybe a little bit of top of it, not more than that. Then the issue of throwing bottles or rocks coming down, once this lot is developed, will be safer, it'll be cleaner with maintenance. Now the way it is, yes, somebody can go there and throw a bottle and there's no control on that. The color, well, yes, this has enough articulations that most of the walls and windows are in depth. If you look in the perspective, you will see that. And if somebody wants that to be darker, that's not a big deal. That's not a big change that can be done. But I think it's a good color. That's all I can say.
Sir Hagopian, I have a question.
Yes.
The stairs that you added against the driveway, those steps are only to lead into one of the bedrooms?
This is for the fire department access.
To get into the bedroom?
Because they have to have the access to the bedrooms. That's why we created that steps there, and it goes through that corridor on the back to reach to the bedroom.
So they cannot come around and access?
They can,
the back?
but this is more straight access to that. And in the meantime, since we pushed the house towards that slope, we were having a problem with the height of the retaining wall. So if we have to put a retaining wall, we put a wall there and we have our trash enclosure underneath that. And by doing that, we were able to solve the problem of the height of the retaining wall. Because this wall now is not retaining wall. In the code, a wall can be higher than 5 feet, but
you
retaining
had
wall cannot be more than
landscaping,
5
but you
feet.
had stepping, landscaping, planters, and other things in the previous design. So you had a planter, and then
Because
you
it
had
was distant from the maximum height of the dirt. Now we are closer to that. And we spent a
5
lot
feet
of
away.
time to solve that portion of the design. And that was, I believe, a kind of creative work to have the steps and underneath that to have the trash enclosure, which will be closer to the driveway. And by doing that, we solved that height of the retaining wall problem. Now the retaining wall is inside that trash enclosure. And the wall in front of it is a wall, not a retaining wall.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Question?
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hagopian. The applicant would, I'm sorry, the owner would like to rebuttal as well? Okay. 2 minutes?
Yes. With my respect to my neighbor, we never met. Now I will check your hand. I'm your direct neighbor. Okay, I believe you have moved to your house 2 or 3 years ago, when the Valley View 1700 Valley View was exist. With the tennis court, with everything. You purchased your house from Trinidad.
Sir?
Okay, I'm going to stop.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Carbett, I'm going to ask you to please sit because you're
I'm sorry. No.
No. I'm going to ask you to sit.
All right.
I apologize. You're cross-communicating. I thought you were being friendly with your neighbor, but you're now going into...
No, I am friendly. No, I am
Mr.
friendly.
Carbett, you're going into an area where you're about to say to Mr. Strauss, Mr. Carbett, please, I'm afraid that what you're about to say to Mr. Strauss was that he bought the house knowing that 1700 was built, and that kind of discussion we can't have. If you'd like to finish without going into
Yes,
the area,
I will.
allow it, but I cannot allow you
Sure.
to cross-communicate with members of the audience. Okay?
Socially, I have a good social life with my neighbor. And I would like to add that to my existing neighbor. As Mr. Hakopian show you the yellow, this is all direct neighbor to the project. So they're right next door, and all of them, they are agreeing and supporting. That's all what I'm trying to say. I know you didn't see. We have 13 direct neighbor, even on Cumberland and Valley View. We didn't go far. So we have the neighbor support. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any members of the audience that were maybe absent? Because I saw somebody coming in and out. Are those the Polychronuses by any chance? No? Okay, so I'm going to close the hearing and open it up to deliberation by board.
So I'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question for staff. From my understanding and for public to understand, to be able to build a 3-story in an R1R zone, generally what we're asked to do is to do a kind of a octagon shape or some sort of a
Four-sided polygon.
Four-sided polygon. And then within that, if the average is higher than 40%, then you're allowed to have a 3-story building, correct?
That is correct.
And that was asked by staff, and that was provided, and that was given.
We didn't ask for it because the entire lot is very steep.
Doesn't matter. I
It
mean, we're talking
exceeds.
about within the footprint of the house.
No, we can do that subsequently, but we didn't ask for it because the entire lot is so steep that it will way exceed the threshold.
So, okay, all right, thank you. So thank you. I went back and listened to the board meeting and tried to recollect myself and remember what we talked about. And one of the main reasons that I did that was because I couldn't tell, without having the dates on, I couldn't tell them really apart. generally when we ask to reduce the square footage, we don't really try to ask to be reduced in areas that are not visible. The purpose of reduction of the square footage or the massing is to be able to see a significant change in the overall look of the design. And that's where the intent of that whole discussion was directed towards when we started this. To me, the difference is so insignificant that I'm having a very difficult time to understand the massing where it was deducted. I do not have any objections to have a large home. That's not the intent of this. The intent is that the guidelines that are given to us, and if a building is being placed on a hillside, it's a sloped site, so then the hillside guidelines need to come into play in this picture. The reason that I was asking in regards to the steps and other elements there and pushing the building back was, to me, the solution would have been very simple, is to, you have the impact wall already and just push the second floor back. Why do you need those steps? Just push them back so that you have a completely separate. You can actually see a profile of the building. This is a perfect example of a hillside. You have a step and then step and then step. But then when you're looking at this is just coming up here, and then this is just a box to me. And it happens the same direction as you are looking if you cut the section in this way on that elevation. So it's deck has been reduced, I understand. Deck is still there, I understand. But what it's doing is it's cutting. And I think one of the neighbors came out and made a really good point that I was going to bring that up anyways, is that we have a large lot. The majority of the lot is driveway. Majority of the portion of the lot is part of this, a piece of this driveway, and then this gray area, this area that it's not even buildable. Then you end up with this portion where the entire building, all the square footage that you're supposed to have within this entire property is squeezed into this little area here. So the challenge is, how do you make this appropriate within? I mean, obviously, they have the right to build a 6,000 plus square foot building in this. That's what the zoning allows. And if they can come up with a large home that fits within the guidelines of the hillside and nestles in, rather than literally shaving off the top of that section and then just kind of plugging it in as a flat home, that's the difficulty for me to see the difference between what was presented last year and what is being presented now. The difference is insignificant for me. 900 square foot. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you can put back the 900 square foot. I don't care, but because nothing has changed, in my opinion. Areas have been taken out that it hasn't made a significant difference in the massing of the building. Truly, it's basically the same thing. Pulling the garage from that tunnel forward, maybe it was better to pull it back, because then now you have some parking space rather than having guests coming and parking in the road. I mean, I don't know. I mean, these are the things that needs to be addressed. Putting the steps, it's creating a lot bigger mass here, whereas what we had before is like a lot softer. You had a landscape, you would have probably grown and hide that retaining wall. But obviously, now we have a different condition, as Mr. Hagopian explained. I'm not there to analyze why this is happening now and why it was there at that point. But my point is, it's not really making it better. I think it's created more mass and concrete as you're driving up. So I think there still need to perhaps more studies done. the truly understand the hillside and how this is going to really change the design of this building rather than keeping the same exact mass that we've seen in the past. So that's where we're.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Malia?
I'm going to add my voice to Mr. Malikian. Initially, when I was looking at it, I couldn't tell the difference and what changed. And I really appreciate the effort of Mr. Hagobian and the owner of losing 800. That is substantial square footage. But the mass is still the same. And to tell you the truth, I didn't have a major problem with the mass or the size of the house. My main concern in the previous meeting was the deck and the railing, which are kind of like, the deck was reduced, but it still need to be reduced further. And the railing, we talked about planters. All you did is just putting these little columns. So it's kind of similar deal as it was before. So. And I also agree with Mr. Malikian. Over here, you had just to step this second floor back, because the whole idea of when we talked about this is reducing the grading and following the guidelines of the hillside. But I mean, what you're doing now is you're increasing the cubic yardage, the grading that you need to do, which is not the intent of what we wanted to do initially. So I think I don't have a problem with the detailing. I don't have a problem with the color. I think just few things need to happen. The deck needs to get a little smaller. The railings need to become stepped planters, and then I can support it.
Thank you, Mr. Pelley. So for me, this is actually the first time I'm reviewing it. I was not here in September of 2015 when this first came up to the board. My initial impressions of the project are that overall, Mr. Agopian has a good design. The colors, the materials are of the quality that we're looking for. I'm a little bit put back by the overall size of the house. I think that the massing as you go up the hillside is still large. The deck area is large, partly because they're pre-planning a pool down the road, and I think that creates a lot of additional deck space, as the applicant indicated. So I think that's part of what we're seeing. I'm glad that we're not doing the cantilevers, but I'm not convinced that the railing combination doesn't create mass, especially on the hillside where it's going to be very difficult to have landscaping. So I would look for some solutions on that as well. But I could be in support of the project with significant conditions as to those issues. And as far as Mr. Malikian's concerns about the trash enclosure, changing the condition where you don't have where you have mass, I agree with you on that. The reality is, on that particular street, the only ones that would be looking at that mass would be the Carpathians, and I think they have one neighbor across the street. So my focus would be on the downhill components more so than street level. That's it. So do we have some conditions that we want to entertain, or are we not in support?
In my opinion, I think we're still at the same level as what we've seen. I don't think that there's been significant enough changes that I can see from the original review. But if you guys feel comfortable with this, and if you guys can put some conditions, by all means.
Mr. Bond,
because for me, I'm gonna ask to go back and look at the massing, hillside guidelines, and other things like that. But if you guys want to go ahead, and I won't make a motion.
It's a tough one, but I think with.
Do you think you can condition it?
I think I can condition it.
Okay, so let's see if we can condition, and based on the conditions, see if there's approval or a second. So what conditions, how would you condition it? let's. Who's reading the conditions back that are already on?
I've got some broad conditions from the discussion so far, which could help. Generally, there seems to be consensus that the design looks too close to what you reviewed before, and the way to solve that problem is by shifting some of the massing, possibly by shifting the second floor to the north, further into the hillside. I do believe that we shouldn't base that decision on these renderings, which are often deceptive. You might want to, if that's a condition, possibly reopen the hearing to ask the applicant, because that can sometimes have unforeseen grading issues if that rendering isn't accurate. But that seems to be the direction on a broad scale. One way to do that would be to get rid of the side stair and then move the second floor, shift it over the body of the lower floor below it. There was concern that the change to the garage actually added mass rather than solving the massing problem, and I can see that there appeared to be more stepping in that area than there is the case now, where we have more of the straight up two-story volume, although it is, again, similar, as you've said. So I didn't hear a condition for that, but that would be an area to focus on possibly. We had a condition to change the design more significantly, mainly in the massing. We've heard from several commissioners about the railings and that they would be more successful if they involved planters, less of a traditional railing, and something that worked better with the hillside setting and the berm leading up to them. There's concern that the deck is the size as proposed because it appears that a pool may be proposed in the future. Staff had similar concerns about the deck, and there was a limited amount of terracing that was proposed in this version versus the flat deck from the previous version.
For the record, Mr. Platt, I believe applicant indicated that was the intent.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, yeah. So, but the idea being that if there's a way to reduce the size of the deck, create a lap pool rather than a larger pool that would conform better to the hillside and to the goals of the board, that would be one
But they're not proposing
possible.
a pool right now, right?
They're not proposing.
No, they're not. It's hard to review something that isn't proposed, but if it's been stated.
How can you put a condition on something they're not
I don't
proposing?
know.
And then Mr. Churchin said, as we look at the proposal, to focus more on the massing as seen from below rather than from the adjacent area up on the hill.
Yeah.
And that's all I've gotten so far.
So my concern is that there is areas that in the past for other projects, such as the issue of moving the mass backward, where that has triggered a redesign because we have wanted as a board to see what that would look like. For example, if the stairs are going to be removed that triggers a redesign. There are other elements that we just went over, other conditions that we have entrusted staff. So I will entertain.
So let me give you my thought on how, in my opinion, how simple would have been if this would have came back to us with just a simple revisions to the project that would have made a significant change that would have been acceptable, in my opinion. But still, it would have been a call for us. So, for example, just kind of hypothetical, without even losing square footage, without losing that 800, 900 square foot or whatever it is, as a hillside, so this balcony right here, for example, this, you go back and look at this, you still have this mass. But what has happened is we managed to push the building back a little bit further. But it would have been nicer to have the second floor pushed back, get rid of that balcony, or make that much lighter, simpler balcony that works with, rather than carrying the entire mass and the concept of the plaster and the heavy columns, just a simple, light, covered area, possibly even a small little balcony coming out there, rather than creating that large, massive deck. The covered area right above the garage, it's still there as it was there before. But why does that have to stay there? Why can't it be just a simple little softer covered area rather than this mass that is creating a 2-story volume there? You have the upper level, which is nice, but it could have been a lighter system. You have this little area. I don't even have the pointer, but you have this little thing. So all of these little areas that are creating these volumes, these masses, are creating this heavy, top heavy and sitting on top of the hillside. That it's not even it feels like it can be taken off and then put it on the ground, and it would be just as fine, as it would be on the hillside. So a lot of these elements there, like, okay, so imagine this, if you take this out and create some nice, simple, clean, very minimal covered area, and if you push this back, then you have a balcony right on top of this for this unit. And I don't know, I don't want to get into the floor plans and all that stuff. That's not. But my point is that these elements that are still there from the before, to me, that's what I want to see. I'm not here to redesign, but I want to see something different. Not taking out an 800-900 square foot of a basement area to say, okay, I've lost 800-900 square feet, and here it is. That's not the point for us to meet, and that wasn't the point for us. So any redesign here, I mean, it's up to you guys.
But Mr. Malikian, if he changes the stuff that you were talking about,
Right.
then it might become a complete different design that we need to look at.
That's what I would have brought in from September to now. That's would have been the difference that I would have seen. That's would have been the difference.
I see your point. It might change too much. Chair, I don't know.
I will allow Mr. Hagopian to 1 minute to 2 minutes to clarify what you need to clarify, but we're not gonna go back and forth like this.
Mr. Malikian, we didn't take out that 800 square foot from the basement. The entire house is reduced. Bedrooms, living room, dining room, all these things are reduced. But please say something that when I leave this place, I know what to do, not to create more confusion.
Okay, so
Excuse me, let me ask this question. Do you want us to go back to what we had then to redesign that, or because everything that we did was the result of pushing this back here, those stairs that we have there, is because we thought about that location for, believe me, I'm not joking, several days we found the solution how to have something there that is not against the zoning code for the retaining wall. Shall we push back the way it used to be?
Mr. Hagopian,
okay. I understand what you're saying, and I'll be clear of what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
And we're not going to have a cross communication. I'm just going to explain what my
Mr.
thoughts
Hagopian.
are, and I'll be a lot more clear if I wasn't clear. To me, the amount of square footage that you've lost, to me, the only thing that I significantly saw was at the basement. I did not recognize the square footage that you lost at the areas that you're talking about of the rest of the house. It's not significant because when I'm looking at the massing is still the same. So what I'm trying to say is that go ahead and put that back. I don't care. My point is the massing needs to be smaller. I don't care if you go ahead and come back with 500 square foot more. To me, if the massing is not right, if you don't take out the important portions of the ones that created the mass originally in September and August or last year, and you came back with the same thing, it's just numbers, semantics for me. So you're not really have done anything for me to say that I see this different than the other just because on the numbers. Well, if that's the case, you've increased the cut and fill. So if it's a number, then it's increased on the other end. So I'm not looking at the numbers. But what I'm confused about is I don't see the difference, but I see more in cut, whereas it should have been less because the way that you took out the areas down at the basement. So there are ways that I think it can happen. I'm sure you can. I mean, I'm not saying it can't cannot happen. But what I'm saying is that
Mr.
what I'm trying to say
I
is
can't
that
allow
the
that.
significant
I cannot.
changes that it was done from there to here, to me, it's not there.
Okay.
So that's what I'm trying to say.
All right. I appreciate the clarification. Do you have a-
Can we give him like clear direction?
No.
on the redesign?
Let's first look at to see if there's a support for any motions being made. We've had a reading of the conditions. If there is no motion to approve with conditions, then we can go into the next stage. But is there a motion?
Well,
'Cause you brought
made
it
the
up.
motion, correct?
No, he didn't make the
I
motion.
didn't.
He said he would be.
No,
he would
based,
entertain.
based on redesigning all these items, I don't think.
So it doesn't look like there's support for a motion to approve with conditions. Therefore, we're going to go into a motion for redesign. Based on a motion to redesign and the applicant's request for more clarity, I'm going to allow Mr. Bellion to go into revisit the areas that you were concerned about with some more clarity for applicant. Okay?
For me, I think you should start back at the old design. That's number one. Number two, you lose this by just pushing the second floor back. You don't move the whole house. We don't need more grading. Number three, the railing needs to be. This is not eliminating the railing. This is highlighting it. You're gonna get rid of all that and do like a step planner or something. And mass and scale. The items that Mr. Malikian talked about, these are the ones that are creating the mass and scale, which is this, and this. You need to reduce these somehow. Like, for example, this can become a trellis. This doesn't need to be this big. This can be just maybe a balcony.
My concern is we give very specific design direction, very specific. Move this back, remove the railing, put this railing back, get rid of this, and push the second floor back. These are very specific. But I think we need to be a little bit more general, because if we give very specific and it comes back exactly what we told them and we don't like it, then is it fair?
But he's asking for specific
No,
direction.
But
here's the thing. We cannot prescribe design.
exactly.
Okay, we're not prescribing design, because what you're pointing out, for example, what you're pointing out, for example, with these blocks, right, is something that I thought was an improvement. Okay, and so we can't say get rid of these. I think that that's unfair to the applicant, okay? Because we can comment. I do agree that this is way too uniform, and when it was in this particular with the overhang, it looked inappropriate, and we've rejected that time and again when it's come up under design review. Right? We've had multiple renderings of this overhang idea that just haven't worked because the downhill neighbors look up and they see concrete, right? And they see this overhang. So I think this is an improvement over this condition, right? So I and I apologize if I was not clear in what I was asking, which was let's provide some clarity in our concerns, and so that the applicant can go back and can design around those concerns. I agree, for example, that one of the ways to deal with the mass is to push back the second floor. And if you do that, then what happens is you do have a step, and that conforms better with the hillside guidelines of building into the hillside, so that the view line is more like this feature here, where there is stepping. But on the southeast elevation, there isn't. On the northwest elevation, there isn't that much. And so that works. And what I heard, Mr. Malikian's concerns were these volumes are massive. You have a delicate treatment here. There could be a different type of treatment here. There could be a different type of treatment there. It doesn't have to be. We're not prescribing the treatment. I'm not prescribing the treatment. But those treatments can reduce how heavy the building feels to members of the board. For me, overall, I think the design. Again, Mr. Hagopian is a good designer. The design, I think, is nice. I think that the shift from the overhang to this version is better. I think that it does have a little bit of mass, and as particular in the southeast elevation, there needs to be a little bit of give on the second floor. That's all I can say as far as providing direction. With that, if there are no other comments, I'll entertain any motions.
Can we read the comments?
I think we've pretty much narrowed it down to 3 broadly drawn, non-specific conditions. Step back the second floor, lighten the covered porches and entry area in whatever architectural means Mr. Hagopian chooses, and that staff will work with him on that. And finally, revise the railing design around the perimeter of the deck area. My recommendation, if we were working with Mr. Hagopian, maybe there's not a single solution. Maybe one area has a planter and maybe a railing is appropriate in another area, so we can entertain something that's looks good together but may have different solutions. And otherwise, I think that sums up your discussion.
Anything else? Just one issue of clarification. We're the second floor step back is to reduce the mass appearance, but on this, what he's done on this design, on this stairway, on this, I wish we had another view from on this, by pushing it back into the hillside, as he's trying to preserve some of that living space. So, would a combination work, in your opinion?
Absolutely.
Pushing back the first floor and then pushing back the second floor more significantly for massing? Okay.
Yeah, and we could also, the fire egress will work out. There's a possibility that could come around the other side of the house and a stair in a different location. So we want to be open there. But,
okay.
So does the pushing back the second floor just generally meet?
I think the consensus is that because of the hillside guidelines for stepping back, there's a boxy volume there on the southeast elevation, correct? That's a concern and overall help of mass.
Yeah, so we'll condition it. We sometimes, when we write the conditions out, we sort of say why. We'll say step back the second floor to better meet the hillside design guidelines and relieve some of the boxiness of the massing, something like that.
Okay. I entertain a motion.
I'll move to return for redesign.
Need a second? Okay. Mr. Collin, for the vote, or Jay?
Yes,
Sorry.
Mr. Chair Pro Tem. So there's a motion and a second for return for redesign with conditions, the conditions that we just discussed. Roll call. Mr. Malakian?
Yes.
Mr. Bellion?
Yes.
And Chairman Pro Tem Chartian?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries.
All right. Let's go ahead and call the second case on calendar. PDR 151-16692-3540 Buena Vista Avenue. This is another matter coming back to us. This is going to be presented by Mr. Platt. Mr. Platt, would you like to...
And I want to, before I get into the design, I'll come up to the board to walk you through the design. I wanted to just give you a little bit of back history of this case. It's been fairly complicated, and it's been with the board for a couple of years now. The board has heard this case on 3 different occasions. Two hearings were returned for redesign in 2014. And then in September, the other way. Thank you. In September of 2015, the board approved the proposal for a new single-family house in the Spar Heights neighborhood with a vote of 3-1 for approved with conditions, with 4 conditions. The proposal is to demolish the existing house on the site to construct a new 2,479 square foot single-family house and a 460 square foot garage on the existing 6,500 square foot lot. After the board's approval with conditions, the case was appealed by the neighbors to the rear of the property, and the appeal process began. The appeal was filed in a timely manner. Staff processed the appeal, and the appeal was publicly noticed. But during this time, the applicants and the appellants met and came up with a revised scheme that satisfied the desire of the appellants to reduce the size of the second floor so that the proposal didn't feel as massive to them as they experienced it from the rear of their property. Because the appeal was, there was a formal proposal to withdraw the appeal, but because the appeal with counsel had been publicly noticed, the city attorney made the decision that the appeal hearing needed to go forward. So City Council heard the appeal on on April 26th. Council heard the appeal, and Council decided to remand the case back to DRB. So they neither upheld nor overturned the appeal. And what they were hoping from DRB, and I'll read the language from the motion, Council hereby remands the matter to the DRB to consider the applicant's revised plan submitted into the record. So Council's initial concern was, does the new plan conform to the previous approval by the board? But as often is the case, this is a de novo hearing. Council also mentioned, several council members mentioned that they felt the house was still bigger than the neighborhood average, was too big for the neighborhood, and were concerned about its massing. Over the course of these three previous DRB hearings, the project has significantly changed, especially at the second floor, which originally contained 3 bedrooms. As a result of a DRB condition, the third bedroom was taken off the second floor, brought down to the first floor. And then over time, and in an effort to meet the most recent DRB conditions, which I'll go over in a second, the second floor has been reduced significantly to the point that I, as a staff person reviewing this, don't see a lot of room to further reduce the second floor. If the board did want to entertain considering ways to reduce the mass, and that meant changing the size of the first floor, I'm not sure that that would achieve the goals of reducing the overall sense of mass as experienced by the immediate neighbors and from the street. So with that as preface, I'll come up to the board and walk you through the design, and the applicants have done a good job. Hopefully it's been clear in your proposal. This is the subject property, the 2 adjoining properties. The appellant's house is to the rear up here. And what the applicants have done is show you the main feature of the discussion between appellant and applicant was to reduce the south facade of the second floor by 2 feet. So you can see in this drawing, this was the initial proposal for the second floor that was approved by DRB. This is the new proposal with the 2 feet removed, and then that had the effect of then shifting over the projecting volume at the front, which is where the master bathroom is. In these drawings with the elevations, you can see the dashed line shows the outline of the previous approval at the various facade views, and then the current proposal. So what happened was 2 feet was shaved off of this side, and then 3.5 feet was shaved off here as that correspondingly moved over. This facade was reduced in width from the original width, and the balcony was actually somewhat reduced in its width, which you can best see in these drawings, where you can see here's the shift of the master bathroom from this point to this point, and you see the volume that was lost there. The master bath was then shifted over a little bit into the open balcony space to still give them a usable bathroom area. The height of the property or of the project was reduced from 24 feet, which was the approved height, to 22 feet 1 inches. This was done in part by meeting the board's condition to push the house further down into the grade level, and also by reducing some of the ceiling heights at the first floor from 10 feet to 9 feet. The garage was also an issue that we didn't discuss as much at the previous hearing, but the applicants have reduced the height of the garage. So we went from a previous height of 11 feet 11 inches to the peak of the roof to a height of 10 feet 8 inches. So it was reduced by a foot and 3 inches. These are the conditions that satisfied the appellants and led to their choice to withdraw their appeal. Nonetheless, when public testimony was heard at the city council hearing, there is still concern in the neighborhood about the size of the property. As a de novo hearing, it is your right to further consider those things. But the remand from council was specifically to make sure that these changes in the reduction of the 2 feet and shifting around some of these volumes actually met the conditions and the concerns you had from the previous approval. So I wanted to kind of go through the 4 conditions that were placed on the project previously. Staff believes that each of these conditions was met. One condition was worded in a way that, I'll discuss that in a second. So let's start with the easy one, which was to add there were 2 balconets proposed at these 2 master bathroom windows. There is no balconet proposed at this window opening, which is in the same room. So a 3rd balconet was added there. We think that satisfies the condition. As I mentioned, the height of the house was brought down almost 2 feet by pushing the house further down into the ground, and then also by lowering the ceiling heights at these facades. Now, what I didn't put up and should have, and I'm sorry for that, the before elevations. I can find them if you need them. If not, I believe they're in your packet.
I think they are.
And you might want to double check that. What happened with this was that some of these window heights, the relationship between the windows and the walls and the height of the eave was a little more awkward in the previous proposal that was approved by the board. By lowering the height of the ceiling plate here, it creates better proportions and I think better window-wall ratios at a couple of the facades. The 3rd condition was to push the roof and mass area at the front. There was concern about this area here, and this roof was originally a little more flimsy looking, I would say. There was less roof area. By removing these 2 feet and then pushing this wall over, it allowed for a significant expansion in the amount of roof between the first floor projection and the second floor. We think this helped improve the condition that was or improve the appearance that was previously approved. And then finally, there was a condition to break the bathroom wall, which was this wall, into 2 separate planes to provide relief in this area. The applicant came to us with several proposals to do that, which led to kind of a vertical division here and a shift in the plane of the master bathroom. We didn't think that was working successfully to relieve this mass. We do think that helping with this roof area here and shifting this over and also reducing the width of this facade by a foot and a few inches has helped in that area. When the applicant was trying to reshift the bathroom here to find a way to create the split, we were realizing just the passage, just getting people from the door into the bathroom, moving that area around was proving very difficult to find a good solution.
Lowering the plate height just at that volume, that help?
Lowering the plate height here?
Yeah.
That wasn't a part of the condition. The idea was to kind of change the actual plane of that facade. Because this is a de novo hearing, if you see issues that you think will help the design, the board is allowed to make additional conditions here. Staff's argument was when you look at the proposed, this is the new second floor plan, and this is the previous approval. The stairway was shifted over a bit, and the width of the stairway was reduced. The depth of this bedroom was reduced by a couple of feet. This bedroom is pretty much the same as it was. Looking at the usable area here, there's not a lot of fat, but if you do feel that there's a way to trim it, it's within your right to do that tonight. But staff is recommending approval of the project and it's, I spoke with the city attorney's office before this. You've already approved the project. Your goal now is to either approve the project as revised. You can approve it with additional conditions. Technically, I'm not even sure, and it's so strange. I think you can do return for redesign because there was a lapse between earlier hearings, but I'm not sure that you'll need to go there, but I just want to give you all your options. And unless you have any questions, there's one other additional discussion point. This is a revised landscape plan, and this is the street. Here's the rear of the property. Discussing this with the appellants who are going to speak tonight, I believe. There was concern that if the tree planted at the far rear of the lot was really tall, that it might start, negating all of the work they did to kind of reduce the massing of the house because they'd have this very tall tree toward the rear of the lot. So I just wanted to raise the potential of finding a species of Brisbane box is proposed, which can grow up to 45 feet, possibly a little higher. And so there was a request to see if the board would be interested in entertaining a shorter species. We're just giving staff direction to find a shorter species, and then we could work with the Be Waterwise list and find an appropriate tree type.
I have a question. Has staff met with the appellant on this, the redesign?
Yes, we've been in regular
You've been in
touch with the appellant.
So you.
I don't want to speak for them. I think they're here tonight.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have met with them.
Yeah. And
Mr. Platt, not to make this more complicated than it has been and it might be tonight, but that garage has reduced. Really awkward to me.
I'm going to join you in saying that the height of this door is higher than the height of the window. Often they're the same. There might be a little more headroom here.
I was looking at the visible, the garage door, the space that they've had to reduce, the height of the garage to satisfy the appellant. I'll save that question. I'll save that question for
sure. And the one thing that you notice here is they've reduced the eave projection on a Spanish colonial house. You usually have an eave projection. Usually the garage will have the similar projection as the house. I believe that was reduced here because the more you project out, the higher the roof gets. But that's certainly something you could entertain as a condition to revise.
Okay. One more question, Mr. Platt.
Yes.
What was the overall reduction in square footage?
It was 105.5 square feet, I believe. I think it's on one of these drawings. If you want to double check that with the applicant, but I believe it was a bit over 100 square feet.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Any other questions for staff? I'm sorry, for staff. Okay, seeing no other questions for staff, I would like to open up the hearing. I have Mr. Thibodeau. Did you want to go first or Mr. Hines? Mr. Thibodeau, okay. Reorganize these. Mr. Robert Thibodeau.
Again.
Hello again, Mr. Thibodeau.
So welcome back, and my name is Robert Thibodeau. I'm the architect for Mr. Hines, and we've been at this for a little while, so you guys...
Address for the record, please.
It's for 3540 Buena Vista, and address is 812 Lincoln.
Your address is 812 Lincoln?
Correct.
Go ahead, sir.
So what happened from the last time we saw you until now is that the Hineses and the Lawlers negotiated. The Lawlers, who are here tonight, and the Hineses here met prior to the appeal. So the appeal, the Lawlers appealed. We met about 2 weeks maybe before the appeal date, maybe 3. It took a little bit of going back and forth to kind of work it out. The primary thing for the Lawlers was that they were trying to preserve their view corridor. And so from the Lawlers' backyard, the houses back against each other. So from the Lawlers' backyard, they look at the mountains. The Hines' house is there now, sort of centered on the lot, and the flagpoles are up. And there's already a 2-story house to the right. So uphill from the Hineses, diagonally, and back from the Lawlers, there is a 2-story house already. So the view corridor is really sort of over the center of the Hineses' lot and really to the left also as you look out from the backyard of the Lawlers. So in order to help them and negotiate basically something that could be satisfactory to the Hineses and satisfactory to the Lawlers, we shifted the second floor. Not shifted because we actually didn't shift it, we reduced it. So we chopped 2 feet off of the left-hand side as you're looking at it, and then we also brought it down. And I think the bringing down was a condition that you guys had, but we brought it down 2 feet by squishing it more into the earth, and then also cutting a foot off of the ground floor ceiling height from 10 to 9. And that was satisfactory, as Jay said, and they came up with an agreement, which I think is part of this process. And that agreement went forwards. Unfortunately, it took a minute to make the agreement, and it kind of went back and forth, and then the hearing date was on us for the city council meeting. So we went into the city council meeting with the hearing, with the agreement, and the city council said, okay, fine, this is okay, but we're not experts on design. We're city council, and so we want you guys to look at the changes that were made, which is legit also, and say that this is still within the intent of what Jay and you guys had come up with before, and me and the people who are sitting here in front of you. So that's really why we're here. And if you look at the and by the way, the things that you were asking about the garage, we're happy to extend the eaves if you want us to extend the eaves. If you want to condition something, please let us know. The tree, we're happy to put a different species of tree here. We'd like to move on with the project. We have no problem with conditions. And you guys voted in favor of it, what was it, 3-1 before, some 4 months ago. So I'm telling you stuff you already know. So anyways, I'll let you add it. And if you have questions for me on changes and how we worked with Jay and staff, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Tom Hines?
Tom Hines, 3540 Buena Vista, owner of the house. It's a smaller house now than what was approved. My neighbor's house to the south side is 20 feet tall. This is 22 feet tall. I don't think, it's not a huge difference. The neighbor's house to the north is significantly taller. It's, has a livable attic space that I know they use for living purposes. I don't know. I just would like to move on with the project, quite frankly. And, we came to an agreement with the Lawlers and would like to get the city's okay for that agreement. Thanks.
Thank you. Patrick Ortega?
Can I say for rebuttal if there are any questions, please?
Sure. Okay. Cyrus Sajayan?
Yes. I yield to Mr. Grant.
Okay. Grant Chakis? Michaels. Sorry, I can't read today.
Good evening. No. I'm Grant Michaels. I'm the president of the Montrose Verdugo Spar Heights Neighborhood Association. In the interest of time, I will speak for the board members we have here tonight. We have followed this project from the beginning, commenting primarily on compatibility in mass and scale. We did attend the appeal at City Council, I did speak trying to better understand the project and the new design that was proposed there. From the very first floor plan when this project was submitted, I wasn't able to confirm the exact square footage, but the initial design was above 2,400 square feet. In the subsequent designs, that square footage has increased. At the maximum, it was just under 2,600 square feet. At this point, this design has been scaled back to 2,479 square feet, with mass and scale being our primary objection. The conditions have made improvements, but have not addressed the issue of mass and scale. The break in the master bathroom, I do want to thank Jay and staff for explaining that to us, because that was one condition that we noted that was not addressed. At the City Council appeal, overall size was the primary issue. At that time, we sought direction from the City Council, as we now seek direction from the board members here to identify and explain compatibility, the mass and scale, how a project of this that can be compatible despite its size fits within something that can be conditioned and making it compatible with the Spar Heights neighborhood, or if it does need to be returned for redesign. Our board has spoken before you addressing mass and scale, compromise, compatibility many different times. Going with a project that expands the square footage and the mass and scale only to step it back is not a compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Joseph Lawler.
I'm Joe Lawler. I'm a homeowner at 3541 Downing. I'm the property directly east. And I'm simply here tonight to say that we will stand by our agreement that we made with our neighbor, Tom, to accept this 2-foot setback on the second story, provided that the other conditions that you had previously approved are included, which are reduction of the house height, retaining the DRB approved distance of the first and second story east walls with the east property line. And then only that, given that we've had this history of contention with this project and it's gone on so long, that we respectfully request that whatever the maximum standard is in monitoring any eventual construction would be the case to see that it conforms with all the DRB requirements. This is really in the interest of any future questions from the and uncertainty from the neighborhood, who have been very, very concerned and vocal about this. My only other comment is to thank the DRB over years now for the attention, DRB members past and present, particularly those who have really seriously tried to grapple with our problem of overexpansion in Spar Heights. It's a unique neighborhood. Its beauty and charm really is contingent on the deft setting of these small houses against each other to provide views of the hills. What Mr. Thibodeau said is correct. It's certainly these changes have specifically in mind for us allowing a little bit more of an indication of the mountains that we now are able to appreciate. But beyond that, they really provide a more aesthetically acceptable design. It's something that we've asked about from the beginning of reducing the second-story mass over the first-story mass. This, has been, it was the outspoken opinion of the City Council. They had grave concerns, and ultimately it's more successful. And finally, I would just suggest that we try to reach ahead to the future of Spar Heights and think about this as a guideline of having, I would even suggest, a two-thirds size second story to the full size first story. It allows the promise of the hillsides beyond each of the other houses, and it provides a better aesthetic overall. So that's my complete comments, but I would like to just reiterate that we'd stand by our agreement with our neighbor.
Thank you, sir. I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
In reference to the garage has been reduced significantly, I guess, in part of your agreement. But in looking at the aerial picture that's up there from Google Maps or Google Earth, it looks like where the garage is being proposed would basically be on the opposing side of your garage.
No. It's the opposite side.
So it's on the same location.
No, his house is the one right behind 3540.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Correct? And so is that your garage
No,
that's
that's
back
not.
there? What is that with the
That's
red
actually
roof?
a covered patio that was grandfathered in from the 40s or something.
So your covered patio, basically, I assumed it was a garage. I apologize.
It's open, so
it's open, so you can kind of see through it.
you can certainly see through it, and then the lion's share of the yard and patio off our bedroom and driveway, which is on the opposite side of the property, enters onto it. So our view is really at an angle past the covered patio.
Okay. So my question is, because I'm having an issue with the fact that the garage was lowered, that gap above the garage, this gap here. Let me get the pointer and show you. This, and I'll move this chair so you can see. This, from a design perspective, looks a lot better to me than this, which almost looks like there's no space here, And so my question would be, would you be opposed if we allowed your neighbors to have this design, which is already reduced in size, because when we originally approved it, we conditioned the reduction because it was massive, and we kind of went with this thinking. This has been a result of your concerns about height. But what it does is it creates a condition where you have an awkward-looking garage. Our role as design, from a design perspective, is to prevent things that are awkward-looking. We can't condition the door to be smaller because garage doors have a standard size to allow for cars to go in and out. So,
well, it's
not
always,
to put you on the spot, but
no, I'm here. I'm on the spot.
I don't want to condition the garage to go up. Or give my feedback for the garage to go up to have you guys come back 6 months from now.
My feeling is that it's a balance, isn't it? And you have to consider an aesthetic element versus the functional element versus the placement that it has in the real world. These aren't just designs and drawings on paper.
Sure.
And the huge impact of another foot directly off of our back fence, directly in our view, directly impeding the very thing that we've been struggling with all this time, is a pretty massive change versus the difference between the height of a garage door and its roof for a garage which from the front is all the way on the back of the property. So I struggle with that being significant in the larger realm of the problems we're trying to solve.
And one of the things I struggle with, to be honest, is that there is no view ordinance in Glendale. And so when we keep referring to view issues versus design issues, which is what is the purview of what we are here to do, it also is difficult for us to.
I can only say that the City Council spoke out quite strongly about the mass of this and the overall effect of the reduction of the 2 feet that we have worked hard for is a better aesthetic, which is agreed to by the city, the staff,
I agree with
and is agreeable to both parties. So I find it hard to backtrack and see that would be a good idea.
I agree with you as to the house.
If I may suggest the possibility for the board's consideration, and perhaps the applicant team could address this in their rebuttal, I believe it would be possible on a garage structure to lower the roof plate to get better proportions, increase the pitch of the roof, or extend the eaves so the proportions were.
We did that the first time around. My recollection is we changed the entire roofing system. From I think to a hip roof, correct?
Yeah, no, this would just lower the distance between the head of the garage door and where the eave begins, allowing more roof and possibly more eave extension to get it close to the height that's proposed in the current proposal.
We'll discuss it.
Just throwing it out there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawler.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Lisa Lawler. I'm sorry, did you guys have any questions?
Of course I don't have drawings.
Lisa Lawler.
Good evening. My name is Liz Lawler, and I am one of the appellants. I live behind the property at 3541 Downing, and I have some statements to make on the landscaping, but I would like to address this garage issue. Firstly, I'd like to state that our issues are not just view corridor. For 2 years, we've been battling the scale and mass of this property. And in fact, it's my husband and my intention to pursue a change in the city ordinance for the FAR, despite the fact that we will be losing that opportunity for our property. That's how strongly we feel about it. The reduction in height of the garage was something that was discussed between the applicant and us. The staff has worked hard at it. The applicant has made changes. All parties are very satisfied with it, and my husband makes a very good point that this sits at the very back of the property and is not really seen very visibly from the front of the property where their street is, Buena Vista. So while there may be some value in the design element of that header above the garage door, I think that's a pretty minor point, given how contentious this whole process has been. And now the two parties, most everyone is in agreement upon this. There are still neighbors who are very, very much opposed to the design. So, I would really request that the DRB consider, that's a small point moving forward, really. The tree in the back is another issue that I really wanted to speak about tonight. And the importance of the tree is this. Their back bedroom sits so close to our property that should they choose a large tree, such as the Brisbane box or any other tree, it's going to impact our property. It's going to block sunlight into our yard. It's going to block it's going to shed onto our property, most likely, and it will negatively impact the power lines. There is an easement there, and the power lines are above. So we're just requesting that DRB consider speaking to the applicant about choosing a specimen tree of, say, 20 to 25 feet, something that would be more appropriate. You could do a decorative olive or something that's water-wise, and that would be very acceptable to us. There are many choices in that category. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lawler. Are there any other people in the audience who would like to speak on this matter that have not spoken? Seeing that, I'm going to invite the applicant to rebut. Mr. Ortega indicated that he would do that, and I'm going to add time in case you need it because you did not speak on the first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Patrick Ortega, 1141 Cabrillo Avenue, Venice, California. I'm glad that there is a recognition that this project has improved even more from the DRB's approval of the project the last time, which was already a project that over a long stretch of time and a lot of professional hours involved not only the mass and scale reduction, but the architectural improvement to all the facades, particularly the ones that are most exposed to pedestrians and to the street side. With respect to the issue of the square footage on the property, this board has been vehement that what it cares about is not so much a square footage reduction, although there has been a massive amount of square footage reduction percentage-wise in this project since its inception, but rather the scale and the mass with which that square footage is expressed architecturally and in the detailing. Staff has provided a lengthy report, which you have, stating that all the conditions that you previously presented for the project have been met. With regards to the City Council was vehement in pointing out to Mr. Michaels as he sought guidance from the City Council as to what would be appropriate mass and scale and how to judge it. The mayor responded to Mr. Michaels that was the providence of this body this body has expressed itself numerous times to approve the project, the last time with very minor conditions, which now satisfy in even greater depth the concerns that the board previously had. So for all those reasons, this project is already much improved since the last time you had it before you. This is not my opinion. The city attorney said so at the incept of his comments on this project before the presentation of the Lawlers on their appeal before the city council. He said that because the scope of this project was already reduced, it was already an improvement understood by implication on what this body had previously approved. One last issue remains on the matter of the FAR. I think that Mrs. Lawler and Mr. Lawler are correct in channeling their energies through the ordinance process in order to reduce FAR. It is not the intent that DRBs serve as a square footage reduction body, but rather as a design review body. So Mr. Michaels has gotten from the City Council an indication as to where to go on matters of mass and scale and the criteria that is used for those. If he wishes to address them further, there is a legitimate legal manner by which he can do so and in which he can point all his energies and directions, and that is the ordinance procedure in the City Council. With respect to the Lawler's concern on the tree, my client, the applicant, has stated that he is willing and amenable to present there whatever staff the applicant and the Lawlers may find acceptable by way of a tree ranging in the 25 to 35 foot high rather than one that reaches all the way to a maximum growth of about 45 to 55 feet. So we don't have an issue with that. As to the garage conditions, we do agree, and the professional view of the architect in this case has been that the garage was a much better design the last time that this DRB approved that design, but so as to make this thing go by in a less contentious fashion, we agreed to what we think is a lesser design on the garage, but we leave it up to the discretion of this board as to whether it will guide staff or guide us on how a better design for the garage can be achieved, or whether, in fact, the previously approved garage design will obtain.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Questions for the
Actually, I have a question for the architect.
Mr. Thibodeau, would you like to, or would you please come up?
What is the, you're showing the slope of the roof to be 2 1/4 on a Spanish tile roof. Is that even possible?
You have to do an extra layer of underlayment. So we basically put a...
So are you waiving all the warranties and anything that comes with the roofing? Is that what it is? Or are you just going to be putting it like a decorative?
The waterproofing will really come almost like you put on a flat roof. You know, we'll use...
doing a torch down, and then you're going to put the, like Spanish roof tile on it?
Yeah, you can put an extra layer of waterproofing. A torch. It's not the same as the torch down roofing, but it's...
Right, I understand.
Yeah. We were worried about that too, though. It's a good point, and we had contacted the roofing company when we were trying to lower the building and asked them how this was technically possible, and they said it was.
Okay. My last question, I saw a set of plans here. I don't see, almost 80% of the reference details that you have on your elevations are incorrect. So do you have a reference detail for the exposed eave rafters that I can see what that detail looks like?
Let me know if you need something else.
Okay. I'll take that. Thank you. So your end. So this is correct. What we have here. So your end rafter is rounded end, and it comes out. What's the cantilever side? I mean, how far does it come out? It doesn't. We don't have a dimension on anywhere. Oh, there it is. A foot. Saw it on the section. Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Billion, any questions?
No. Okay.
All right. Seeing no more questions from staff, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment portion and open it up to deliberation. Mr. Billion, do you want to go first?
Sure.
No. I asked if there was anyone in the audience that wanted to speak.
What happened at the city council was completely different than what...
Sir, no cross communication. I asked if there was anyone that wanted to speak. No one stated that they wanted to speak. There are no other questions. I can't allow cross communication. Thank you very much. Mr. Billion?
For me, I'm looking at it from the perspective of what we reviewed last time and what we approved last time. And this is clearly an improvement over what we have approved. So, and also I'd like to encourage basically that you guys came together and agreed on something. So with me, I have no issues. I'm in support of the project.
Mr. Milliken?
I think I abstained myself, or I was the one out of the four. I don't remember what it was. So what I'm looking at here is that the design that it went through, the design review, it has been modified and altered by what the most immediate neighbor that has been impacted. So, and I appreciate the work that has gone through. I think a lot of effort has gone through that to reduce. But I think, in my opinion, I think what has happened is that some of these little details have kind of been lost in this translation of reduction. So I think Mr. Churchin mentioned about the garage and just kind of lowering it. Let's push it. Let's lower it. And so what does it look like at the end? How does it end up being? It's not just reducing it. Let's make this thing look right. You know, it's not just lowering the roof. Okay, then I just looked at the rafter details that it's referenced on the garage, and it does have a 1 foot overhang. That's what the detail is showing. It does have a 1 foot overhang. So I think the roof of the garage needs to extend on the side so it can get cut off. Because if it does get cut off, then the detail is completely different. So I think there's some detail issues here that I think needs to be addressed. It has become a lot simpler. It has been reduced, but to me, it has always been the largest home in the neighborhood. So it's always been that contention. So that's why I was always driving this thing to lower it, reduce the height, do this and do that. So if everybody's happy with it, except the
correct detail.
Just go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm going to have to hark back to the last time around, because I think the issue is that the house is in Spar Heights. Spar Heights is a very unique neighborhood in Glendale. However, this particular street, and why I've always had less reservations about the size of the home, has always been that its two neighboring properties are large buildings. They're large homes. The house to the south is a large property. It's a large, massive home with a lot of roof, visible roof. Property north of the house is like my home. It has a very large attic, livable attic space. And so, had this been on the other street, one over, I would have different views as to the context. So, from that perspective, I think the square footage issue is not the concern. The concern is the massing of this property, and we reduced it significantly last time. And like Mr. Benlian, I'm happy to see that actually they've worked with their neighbor and reduced it even further, and achieved that at a great cost. Actually, they're going to have to dig into the dirt. They're going to have to reduce the foundation, and they're taking on a lot of cost to appease the neighbors. Costs that in any other neighborhood where there are second-story homes, they wouldn't have to do. So I think they've gone a long way, and I'm in support of the project being approved again. I think that there has been some, as you indicated, detail loss, but I'm comfortable that staff could work with applicant to fine-tune any of those issues. I'm not so distraught by the garage that I would like to, even add that as a condition. But it is something that, as you pointed out, Mr. Milliken, that as you push things down, sometimes you lose detail. But I think staff can revisit detail and ensure that the detail is there. So I have no other comments, and I will entertain a motion. Unless there's other comments from
I think
colleagues.
You need to pass the gavel.
Okay.
Just forewarning.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? Seeing no second.
Be clear, the motion is to approve with conditions.
Oh, sorry. Let's have the reading of the conditions. I apologize. It's getting late in the day.
As of now, I have a condition to change the species of the tree at the rear of the yard to a species that will be approximately 25 feet tall at maturity, and then a condition to create an eave detail at the garage that will allow for the expression of the rafters in a way that's similar to the rafters at the main body of the house, or the main house.
Yes.
Look at the garage one.
Oh, beyond the rafters. Okay.
A holistic look at the garage to make sure that it conforms with the design of the home.
Okay.
Okay, with that, I'll
make the motion to approve with conditions.
Is there a second? Seeing no second, I will need to pass the gavel, and for the voting portion of this matter, select another chair. Seeing that the first was made, the motion was made by Mr. Billion, I will pass the gavel to Mr. Lincoln for the hearing.
And you are?
And I'm recusing myself.
Second.
Of my duties as chair pro tem in this matter, and I'm going to second Mr. Billion's motion. You have to
go ahead.
Oh, roll call. I'm sorry.
Oh, you want? Oh,
yeah,
roll call.
Yeah, you're the chair. So
roll call.
I will
done
call
this
roll.
For a couple of years, so
we haven't had
Commissioner Benlian?
Yes.
Commissioner Charchin?
Yes.
Commissioner Malikian?
No.
Okay. Motion passes 2-1.
Thank you.
With conditions, as noted.
Thank you.
Are we going?
Wait for Art to kind of announce it.
All right. Ready for the next matter? Thank you, Mr. Thibodeau. This next matter on calendar, PDR 151-3248, 3063 Hollywell Place. Can we have a reading of the
Sure, thank you.
matter, staff report, please?
The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing 2,078 square foot two-story house, rear deck, and two-car garage and construct a new 4,226 square foot two-story house with rear deck and pool, one-car garage, and two-car garage. This project was previously submitted on and considered by the board on May 15th, 2016, and was returned for redesign with conditions. And it may be easier if I get up and show you. Here, the old plans are located in this column here, 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 with new plans down here. So we had quite a few conditions, but the main concern was to introduce step backs into the design in order to modulate the volumes to better follow the topography. So if you could see the existing building, I think this is probably the best example. Follows more, it was cut back in this area here and follows more downhill with the topography. And also, this area in here was cut back too. Just as they did reduce the size of the house by 739 square feet to accomplish some of these changes. The next condition was to delete or reduce the size of the tall wall alongside the lower driveway. If you recall, there was this wall at the entry here. They've reduced that from 17 feet to 13 feet. And staff believe that fits in with the design of the building. The next was to eliminate the stacked garage and move all garages to the lower level. Previously, there was the driveway here and a garage here that was entered at the top. And then there was, if you drove down to this lower driveway here. So there was an entry here and here. So they were stacked on top of each other here. So what they've done is reduced the driveway eliminated the driveway entry here. So there's a two-car garage here. And then, it's easier to see here, the one-car garage is located here. So they eliminated the stacked cars. It was requested that they provide a rendering depicting the project from a downslope vantage point, which is located up here. You can see, looking up from the street, that's what you would see. There was a comment to consult with the structural engineer, and I'll let the applicant address that. He's stated that he has done that. The comment was to revise the roof design to ensure that overlapping roof areas are high enough to be built, waterproofed, and drained. They will be having a sloped roof to address these and are separated now. They have a rainwater clarification system, which they have a detail for here.
I'm sorry, a rainwater what system?
Clarification, to collect all the rainwater instead of having the gutters, the waters, to do that. And they will have a rain chain that goes down to the ground to a storage tank to collect the water.
That is if we have any rain.
If we have any rain, yes.
If and when.
Let's see. They were to include the location of the air conditioning unit, which is here. Staff believes that they've addressed all the conditions that were requested. Other than like the color palette, it's still not exactly clear because with between the gray and the whites, and staff recommends that they have less white color and more earth tone colors. One of the other things was the roof material will be a brown color stuck gravel. That was one of the other conditions. So with that, do you have any questions? Staff is supporting the design and feels that the applicant has addressed the conditions.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? So I have just one question. The wall, there's not a rendering of the wall, the new 13-foot wall from the front, or I would guess that would be the northwest elevation if we had a northwest elevation. Is there a
It would be
depiction
this
in
wall. It would be this wall here.
Okay.
Because facing the front, this would be the front of the
Gotcha.
house, so it would be this wall here.
So that's that art wall down there is the depiction of it.
Correct.
As well.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, one other thing I should add is we did receive a letter from the Chevy Chase Estates Homeowner Association in opposition to this project.
And I have a question for staff. This was included. Was this for?
That was not
It's just
part
a
of
note
this.
Okay.
Oh, that's just for your edification, I think.
Gotcha. Okay.
The only thing that I gave you was the letter from
Okay.
Brian Doran, the president.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to open up the public comment portion of the hearing. Speaker Artem Golostian. Stable.
Move it. No, that's fine.
Artem Gillespie, I'm the designer on the project, 1230 East Broadway, Glendale, California. Obviously, this is back for redesign. First, I want to thank you for sending it back for redesign because I think it's a lot better. We like their design a lot more. The client does as well. So I'll just briefly go through what Kathy already mentioned. Is first the location of the building. We chose the location first to cover up the scar that's going to be left behind by demolishing the existing building. Second is just to take advantage of all the topography interesting topography that we can use around the house. By doing that, we have the opportunity.
Need to speak in the mic so people can.
Thank you.
By doing that, we have the opportunity to enter, exit on both levels of the property. I mean, of the building. And one of the conditions from last time was to
Record your line.
Thank you. One of the conditions from last time was to step back the building to be more harmonious with the topography. So what we did is we pushed the second floor, as you can see from terraces that have been left behind, back as far as we can, and we've reduced the square feet of the second floor, not for the reason to reduce it, but by reducing it, we were able to do all this. Second is material-wise, there's very few. I know it was unclear which part of the building was concrete, which one was stucco. I think that was the issue last time, and I've tried to change the wording on the elevation so it's more clear as to what material we're using and how it corresponds to what the legend says. But I'll just go quickly through it. Everywhere the building touches dirt, we have concrete and board form concrete, which is a more earthy kind of material when you touch it to earth. And then as you go further away from the dirt, you come into glass and stucco and water, which is the pool. And as far as the roof goes, we're going to use a built-up gravel roof, and the color is going to be as close of a color as we can find to match the terrain around the property, and hopefully the roof will disappear into the landscape. And then there was issues with the roofs overhanging and having such a low profile at the fascias. We consulted with our structural engineer, and since we're using concrete on practically the entire building except some interior partition walls, he advised us that as long as we're above 8 inches on all the slabs, which we're at 10 inches, at least what I'm going to address is where it's on the exterior, which you guys care about more. Anytime we're above more than 8 inches, we can span 27 feet between 2 points. And cantilever-wise, we can go easily. Our maximum cantilever on the roof decks and on the other decks are 5 feet, and with 10 inches, he said that's not going to be a problem at all.
So it's actually a concrete building?
Yeah, completely, more or less. Okay. There's different methods of concrete, but yeah, it's completely concrete. And then the terrace, what we did is kind of play with the idea of this being a flower pot sitting on the mountain. If you look at, we didn't have time to put it on the model, but if you look on the elevations, you can see we're draping, there's some succulents that drape, like the way we've drawn them, and there's going to be a mix of different succulents draping over the edge of the roof. That wasn't the vision, but I think it's going to be there. And then as far as rainwater, last time we talked about how the roof is flat and where we're going to take the rainwater, where are the downspouts. So we have a sloped roof, which peaks in the center. At 2% going to all the edges. All the edges have the same exact detail as drawn on the roof plan. Instead of downspouts, we're using rain chains, and at the bottom of the rain chains, we're going to have a plumbing underground, which is going to take all the water to the storage tank, which is always going to be empty because there's no rain. So hopefully it rains, and when it does rain, rain chains are going to be a type of entertainment. So that's it. Any questions?
Thank you. No, thank you.
Thanks.
I have any questions for staff?
The roof is concrete as well?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other speakers? I don't see any other speaker cards on this project. Okay, we're seeing no other speakers. There's no need for a rebuttal, so we're going to go straight into the deliberation. Mr. Malik, would you like to start?
I appreciate the redesign. I think you addressed every condition that we had concern about, and I see the difference before and after. I think it's a substantial change from the large massing on the west elevation to the new stepped elevation. I think that the entire articulation of the building has been addressed with this new design. So I think I commend you. I think you've done a great job. One thing that I would recommend is the landscaping palette that you have here is identical to any other hillside project that we get from the same architect. So I think we need to go back and look at some of the planting and be able to address it according to the style of the architecture that you're proposing. Because 2 projects prior, you have identical trees that it was proposed on that project and it's being proposed on this project. So I truly think completely a redesign of the palette itself. We have guidelines, we have hillside guidelines, and we can't really go beyond and go crazy wild, but I think you have a very nice design. And I think with this design, you should have an appropriate landscaping. Other than that, I think everything has been addressed. You have a lot of glass in this, and as staff has mentioned in the comment that you may want to get a Title 24 engineer this and look at this and see if it's actually going to be energy efficient. There are ways that you can obviously do triple pane, tinting and other things, but overall, I think it's a really nice design, and it'll be a shame for the revision of the fenestrations in the building. The only other concern or just the limitation of the lighting, exterior lighting, that would be something to consider, because being that it's all glass, at night it's going to be the beacon on the top of the hill, because everything is going to be lit. So I think the lighting needs to be addressed as well, being that it's a really nice design. I think
exterior lighting?
Lighting, yeah, absolutely. So other than that, I think that's it.
I agree with Mr. Malikian. It's 300% better. Our main concern the first time was the mass and scale, and it wasn't conforming to the design guidelines, where right now it is, and you can see it over here in this elevation, and the west elevation where the second floor is stepping more and conforming with the hillside contours. So huge improvement. I think you just need to pay attention to these conditions here. We spoke about this last time, where you have like overlapping roofs and you have these small areas. Just make sure that you're paying attention to that. And other than that, I'm okay with it.
Okay. I have to commend the applicant for the redesign and also addressing one of the concerns that we had last time with the tree. The oak tree has been saved by this design, and is now beyond the impact zone as well. So I think that's a good accomplishment here. I still have major reservations about that art wall. Okay. It's now 13 feet tall versus 18 feet tall. It serves more of a purpose this time, so I'm a little more reserved in my objection to it, or complete objection to it, because in this design it kind of creates a courtyard for the two portions of the structure here that we have. It kind of creates like a privacy screen. So maybe if you had labeled it privacy screen and versus an art wall or a monument wall, maybe that would have been a better thing to be considering. But I think that there's room to reduce the size of that wall. I think that a reduction would help with the overall mass. I think that lighting is going to be an issue for this project. I think that it is going to have a little bit of glare. However, the modern design has the concrete glass, mix. So I'm okay with it. I think that staff will have to work with applicant on the lighting plan to make sure that to the best possible accommodation between lighting sufficient for security and livability, and also reduction of glare. And maybe there's possibility, since it is going to probably be a energy efficiency issue, and it's going to have to go and be calculated out. Maybe there's some anti-glare films or things that can be utilized to prevent glare and to prevent too much bleeding of light. With those types of conditions, I would be in support of the project.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, with that, can we get a reading of the conditions, Mr. Platt?
Sure. But before I do that, shall I mention that I think we've had a historic first at this meeting in which the applicant thanked the board for a return for redesign? I don't remember hearing that before. So, so it looks like we
can get on a replay loop
right,
for
just
future.
Before every meeting.
For those long meetings at the end.
Or actually, when we're telling someone that we're recommending it, we'll tell them it's for your own good. So
there you go.
We have a condition recommended to revise the landscape palette to better conform to the design of the house. We have a condition to provide an exterior lighting plan and to ensure that all exterior lights are shielded laterally from lighting up across the valley and to focus light downward. We have a condition to, and this is for Mr. Benlian's thought about the roof, and tell me if this works, provide a detail of the area where the roof overlaps to ensure that that area is buildable, and then building and safety will be able to look at that.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a
If it's a solid concrete building, then they're going to form it and they're going to pour it, so I don't know if it's going to be...
I was thinking more for the roofing, but if there's no support for...
I think contractors are going to have a field day with this. So,
okay, we'll strike that condition then? Okay, strike the condition. And there was a discussion about reducing the size of the wall by whatever name you want to call it. So
the only way that you can actually... I mean, they have reduced it.
Yes.
And the impact that you have as you drive up, it's substantially less than what they have, right? So it's this versus this, and it's lower. So the only way that you're going to actually see this is if you're actually straight on right there. But you're looking down from this point up. So it's like it's completely covered unless you're like completely on the other side of the mountain and looking straight across. So, I mean, it's...
Based on location, like Valley View. I mean, Valley View was the same situation. You're going up a narrow street. This is the end property.
This is the last house, yeah. So strike the condition?
It doesn't look like I have support for the condition.
I'm just asking. And then finally, I recommend condition to apply an anti-glare coating or film to the windows facing out toward the canyon, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think backtracking to the lighting one in reference to the anti-glare issue, the proposed lighting, it is the cylindrical lighting that basically goes down. So that's, I think, already met, that condition with what's proposed. But what I think we were directing staff to do is make sure that any other lighting that's in the footprint or in the pool area or so forth, or in the interior facing outward is reviewed in such a way that it reduces the lighting glare into the neighborhood.
And what we often will do is limit the number of exterior fixtures to a reasonable number. We can't regulate the interior lighting, which is probably going to be the bigger issue. And
with maybe an anti-glare film.
That's usually on the outside so that you reduce solar glare and hot spots on the glass.
Spandrel glass.
So that they could live in a cave.
Spandrel glass, yeah.
Solid black.
No.
But is the board still okay with the anti-glare coating?
Yes.
I can't remember which direction those windows are facing. Is it even an issue? Yeah, so it's not even an issue if they're north-facing windows.
It's more of the lighting, exterior lighting that
Okay, so we'll get rid of the anti-glare coating, focus on the exterior lighting, and we have to live with the interior lighting, but we can ask the owners to turn the lights down. Informally. Right, yeah. So that's everything I've got.
Okay, so I'll move to approve the project with conditions.
I'll second that.
All right. Mr. Platt, if you'll do the roll call.
Go ahead.
We have a first by Board Member Malikian and second by Board Member Benlian. Roll call. Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Benlian,
Yes.
Kincharchian.
Yes.
The motion is approved with conditions, 3-0.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and go through to the last one instead of taking a break, if that's okay with staff and board members. Okay. All right, calling the last matter on calendar, PDR 161-2768, 1329 Campbell Street. Looks like we have Nareg Khodadi.
Do you want to, Mr. Chairman, want a presentation by staff?
No, I'm just trying to figure out. One is okay, that's the applicant. I'm trying to get these in order real quick. All right. Yes. Presenting for staff would be Mr. Oh, hi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to make the presentation short, brief, but to the point to make the evening a little bit shorter. I'm going to jump into the quick summary. It's a first level and second level addition to an existing two-story single-family home. I'm going to break into the existing configuration. I'll go over a brief summary of the proposal, and I'll break into staff's recommendation, and then as far as the mass and scale details and site planning. But the existing lot is rectangular in shape. It's relatively flat, and it's approximately 11,250 square feet. On the property, behind here is the existing site plan to save space on the board, is a two-story, kind of an eclectic Spanish-style home that's sited on there, and it's approximately 2,200 square feet, more or less. There is going to be a new detached garage at the rear part of this project, but it will be under a separate permit. It's currently under building plan check right now, or actually they just pulled the permit, and it will be a 4-car garage with a single 2-car door, and it will have 2 tandem spaces in the rear to accommodate the proposal you're seeing tonight. It will match the style of the proposal you're seeing tonight. It will include finishes such as 2-piece barrel tile, smooth stucco, smooth trowel stucco, and it will have stacked clay tile vents at the gable, and also will have recessed aluminum-clad wood windows to complement the front. They've provided the plans of the garage so you can just see it, although once again, I just wanted to state once again, it is already in plan check right now. It is an accessory structure. So tonight we're really looking at the addition of the second story and the first floor addition at the rear and the new loggia. But this proposal here is a first-time submittal and it's for final review. This is to include a 414 square foot first level addition. In my report, I think it was part of my dyslexia, which I don't really have, but I put 141, but it's really 414 square feet at the first level. And then it's going to have a 988 square foot addition at the second level. And also what's going to be included is there are going to be block walls at the front yard, which is going to have smooth stucco and have a wooden gate. And they're proposing to have some retrofit or new landscaping at the front at portions of it, which I will kind of break into staff's recommendation also as well. Overall, as far as site planning, the addition for the first and second level will be centrally located on the lot, and it will maintain its generous front setback about approximately 32 feet. It will have a garage that will maintain and maintain the prevailing driveway configuration, which will be on its side and will lead to a garage at the rear. They are proposing to do some new landscaping at the front per the landscape plan front here, and they're proposing to keep some of the existing lawn, which I'm pretty sure if you've gone out to the site, most of it is brown. A lot of the landscaping is pretty much dead. Staff is recommending that they enhance the landscape plan to have a greater variety of low or very low water use, drought-tolerant landscaping to complement this beautiful addition that they're proposing tonight. So, onto mass and scale, staff feels that the overall mass of the building is appropriate, and the addition works well with the original design. It blends well with the neighborhood context. Staff has worked pretty extensively with the architect and the homeowner. We feel that the architectural concept with the addition works well with the original design. However, one of staff's conditions, and which we feel kind of pretty strongly about, is the second level addition, which faces Campbell Street, and the elevation here should be set back a little bit further to complement the asymmetrical design of the original home, which has a flat roof at this portion of the facade and has a two-story configuration on this would be the north portion of the front facade. Onto detailing and design and detailing. The materials, once again, we'll have a smooth trowel stucco. We'll have two-piece clay barrel tile. We'll have aluminum-clad wood windows. And also we'll have fabric spear awnings to match what's currently out there right now. And they will be in black, not in blue. Right now they're existing blue, but the material board states they'll change the fabric to black. But staff's overall recommendation is approval with the following conditions: is the second level facing the street should be set back approximately 2 to 3 feet, just to break up the volume, reduce the massing, complement the volume and the asymmetrical design of the original home. Also, the width of the driveway. This is more of a zoning. It should the width of the gate should be 9 feet to comply with zoning. It just doesn't state that. We're just kind of pointing out that the width of the gate in the driveway needs to be 9 feet. And then we're recommending that the driveway on the site plan matches the decorative pattern that they're showing here in the landscape plan. If they plan on redoing the driveway, per code, the driveway at the front needs to be a decorative of a brick or some type of stamped concrete. So we're asking that the site plan matches just like the landscaping. And last, they should enhance the landscaping plan to have a greater variety of low or very low landscaping. Before I conclude staff's presentation, before you there are several letters of support and some that have concerns and some opposition. I'm going to try to summarize this as quickly as possible. There's 5 letters of support. I did receive one anonymous phone call. They wanted to remain anonymous. They just wished the homeowner very well. She just wanted to express that there are concerns with mass and scale. But within the letters of concerns or opposition, the things that I've read on there, which are also there for you to read, is the addition's too large. It has a cubed appearance. It's not complementing the asymmetrical design of the original home. They feel that it's mansionization. It's changing the character of the dwelling in the neighborhood. The project is not in keeping with the architectural style. There was comments that the project should be scrutinized to ensure the addition does not detract the character of the neighborhood and the property's historic integrity, as the property could potentially, this is a potential, be a contributor if the neighborhood were to be proposed to be a historic neighborhood. Now, once again, this is not a historic neighborhood. It wouldn't be a contributor to anything because it's not, once again, historic, but they feel that it should be reviewed to, your review should protect the historic integrity. Additional comments I heard that they strongly agree with staff's recommendation of setting back the addition. There's 2 of them that state that it should be even further. Staff is recommending maybe 2 or 3 feet. They feel that the asymmetrical character or the design should be maintained. This was of great concern. The height of the addition of the second level should be lowered. And last, the cross gable at the addition, what they're stating here is the gable at the front facing Campbell should be eliminated, and it draws attention. And they recommended a design should incorporate somehow of a, they weren't specific of a side-facing gable, but those are some of the concerns I've summarized within the letters. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. That's okay. All right, no questions from staff. I will now open the public hearing portion of the meeting, and I'm going to refer to this spelling here. Is it Nareg Hodadi? Mr. Hodadi, please come up.
Hello, board. My name is Nareg Hodadi, 417 Arden Avenue, Glendale, California, 91203. I am the applicant on the project. I have been working with Dennis for the last couple of months and going back and forth. Homeowner is also here. He would like to speak as well, so I'm going to kind of, not wasting time, I'm going to transfer my time onto him.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Varand Gurjan. Mr. Gurjan.
Good evening. My name is Varand Gurjian. My wife and I are the owners of the beautiful home at 1329 Campbell. But before I talk about the home, I definitely want to thank my new neighbors for the great outpouring of support we've received for this project. Dennis highlighted a few of the concerns that were raised, but I think what got lost in the presentation of those letters was all the letters that we received that fully supported the project. And in the stack of letters, my adjacent neighbor to the north, who's present here today, fully supports the project. My adjacent neighbor to the immediate left fully supports the project. Our neighbor adjacent right across the street fully supports the project. And the neighbor adjacent to the neighbor to the south fully supports the project. The most thoughtful and supportive letter came from Mr. Dietzen, who lives right next door to us, just to our south, where the addition will be happening on that flat roof, as you see, fully supporting our addition. So not to take away from the presentation, but I wanted to point out all the letters of the closest neighbors that fully supported the project with no caveats that you have in your stack. And I wanted to thank them. I've grown up in the Ross Moines area back in the 70s, and I'm very fortunate that my kids are going to grow up in that same beautiful neighborhood. As we look at the drawings of the house, it's very important to note that the vast majority of the front of the house that you see already exists. Nothing in the design of the front of the existing house is changing whatsoever. The only difference is the addition of that upper left corner to the front of the house. As far as the design that we are here today with, I do have to credit city staff, including Dennis and Jay Platt, as much as the architects we worked with. When we first started presenting ideas to the city staff 8 months ago, we had initially just mimicked the existing two-story side onto the other side, thinking, hey, if half of it works, it should work for the whole thing. But with the input we got from the city, we realized that we need to do differing pitches for the roof, create different structure to set it back, give it more character. And that input ended up being invaluable because now we love this design way more than what we had come up with originally. The city staff has recommended approval of the plan in front of you today with 4 conditions. We too ask that you approve the project, but with only 3 of the 4 proposed conditions. We will gladly work with staff to meet the conditions of ensuring that the front yard landscape plan is enhanced with the drought-tolerant landscaping they seek. We'll ensure that the driveway gate opening complies with all requirements and that the concrete and brick driveway drawn in the landscape plan is incorporated into the site plan. The only one condition we ask that you not impose on us today is the first one, requesting that the already set back second-story addition be even further set back.
I'll go ahead and give you another 2 minutes.
Thank you. In order to maintain the original design of the house, we decided to distinguish this addition to the front of the house not only by its design, but we voluntarily set it back from the front of the house. As indicated in the plans you have, 2/3 of this addition, although it may not be clear when you look at it, is already set back 4 feet. And about the center third is already set back about 6.5 feet. So because of that existing flat single-story roof, there is already approximately 100 square feet of inaccessible, flat, unusable roof on top of the first floor. And this allows for the original design, the 2-in-1, to stand out, and it pushes that new massing back with that approximately 100 square feet of not used space in front of it. Staff's proposal to push it back further would create about 150 square feet of unusable space back there. I know it's easy to always say massing, push it back, but in this case, because it's this flat roof and it creates that void, it just looks really awkward and bad. And more interesting, if you look at the street view photos, when you push the new addition further back, it ruins the line of sight from pedestrians and from drivers, because the 2 new windows that get added, as it stands today with the setbacks proposed, you could see the beautiful 2 windows. When you push it back further, you're going to get chopped off. You're going to see that part of the window gets lost when it's pushed back further, and it takes away from the beautiful architecture. The way it's presented makes it really coherent, and we ask for your support to approve it with the existing setbacks. Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. Mr. Ruben Amirian. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, board, or good evening. My name is Ruben Amirian, 700 Solway Street, Glendale, California. Generally, I'm not a very brave person. I was expecting to be called last, but anyway, I'm the first one. I am here to support the project. It's a very well-done project, and I like to use my time on concentrating on the setback that is asked by the staff. If you look at the setback, and unfortunately, the elevation drawing is wrong. If you look at it, the elevation drawing should show, if I may come forward and show you what it should show, it might clarify for you. Is that okay?
Yes, yeah. The pointer's on this side, so if you can come this way, sir. I'll pass it down, no problem.
See, the roof of elevation, this volume that we are concerned of is not there. There is no roof here. The roof is here and above this. So therefore, visually, you are already 2 feet lower than that. You see, the perspective drawing shows better. This roof is lower than this roof, and both of them are lower than this roof. You get it? Because the volumes are smaller, so the roof is smaller, shorter. If you take a look at the roof plan, where is the roof?
The roof plan is over there.
Okay, you see, this roof is coming and hitting the belly of this one. This volume is smaller, this volume is bigger, therefore...
But you have the roof behind it, the larger roof behind it. So
yes,
so
of course you have the large roof. That is on the other side of your vision. You never see that. You absolutely never see that. So therefore, I'm here to support and ask you not to enforce the first recommendation to sit it back. And also, it was kind of comical. The gentleman.
If you were done with the displays, I'll ask you to return to the podium.
Okay?
So
Can I
yeah.
return this to you?
Yes, sure. To the podium, so we can
I think my time is up.
You still have about 30 seconds.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that there is no need to set back. That's a very nice volumetric composition there. There's a 1/3 of it is sitting back 2 feet further. It has a nice window and it looks good. And if it looks good and feels good, it is good. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Dorian.
What do you do for a living? You should be in sales.
No, actually, I'm an architect and an artist.
And he sat at this dais for many a year with the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you for saying that.
Thank you. Last speaker is John Stepanyan. Mr. Stepanyan.
Good evening. My name is John Stepanyan. I live next door to Mr. Gorgian. And my wife and I, as a matter of fact, my daughter is here also, we fully support this project. Not only it's a nice project, it's going to add value to our property and the neighborhood, but personally, Varant was very, open with us since day one. We communicated, and he kept us informed with all the projects, all the plans, and we see it's going to be a nice addition to that building and also for the neighbors around. So we fully support the project.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak who has not spoken? You can do so by filling out a speaker's card. Seeing no more speakers, did you want Mr. Khodadi, would you like a rebuttal? No? Okay, rebuttal is being waived.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay, staff has questions, so Mr. Khodadi, please come up to the podium. I keep calling the board members staff. I apologize. Usually doing that tonight. I apologize to
just
volunteers.
In regards to condition one, what is the main reason that you guys are opposing the pushback with the 2 feet? Is it that you need the space, or is it like what's the real reason?
I think the main reason is the void area that we get once we do push it back. I think from pedestrian level, street level, it just those two windows get pushed back a lot, and
so the windows getting out of the side.
Yeah, and then you have this area of 10 feet or 8 to 10 feet. It's not a balcony; it's just a flat roof area with a small parapet in front of it. So I think that's the main.
So basically, an exterior design.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Reason, not an interior.
Not really. That's the laundry, master bathroom, master bedroom side.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. Closing the public comment portion. Opening up deliberations. Who would like to go first? Again,
Sure.
Like to go first.
So, I'm going to be on record as saying that it's kind of rare for me to look at second floor additions as being accepted so well with what my standards are. I think it's a kind of starting point of the house. It's a asymmetrical volume shaped building. I think it's in my opinion that the second floor addition completes this building. So I commend the architect, I commend the owner, and I commend the neighbors that have recognized that and supported this and sent us the letter. Having said that, I want to talk about the additional couple of feet that the staff is recommending. And with all due respect, I'm going to state my own opinion, and I'm not going to read what it said and why that was recommended, which I think the recommendation of pushing the building back to be able to accentuate the existing volume an additional couple of feet, it's really not going to do the effect that they're talking about. I think what they have right now, it's already doing that. I think that additional couple of feet that is being pushed back, the setback that is already being created, it's bringing the existing volume forward. I think it would have been more difficult, and I would have agreed with staff if the second volume was in line with the first floor level, which I think that then I would have agreed, saying that by pushing back the second floor, it would create a much better volume. It's my opinion. I think that by pushing it back a foot or two, if they're designing this and if they brought this in, and I think it's a very well designed project, I think that a couple of additional feet is not really going to create that impact that everybody's looking for. I think if they would remove that entire section out of this picture, then yes, I agree. But then, it would have that big impact. But we're not here. We're not discussing that. I think this setback is already done well. It's proportioned well, and I think it celebrates the entry point, which I think is a very unique and interesting way of create. I mean, I haven't seen this kind of a volume, around. I've seen it, but this is very unique, and I appreciate the design that it's not competing with what's there. And I think it's a very well designed. I like the details. I agree with staff about the landscaping, and the remaining, the 2 or 3 or 4, the front yard, the width of the driveway. So the rest of the stuff are just minors. I think we're okay. But I think overall, I think it's done well. I don't think they need to change anything.
First of all, I would add my voice to Mr. Malikian because, when you look at second floor additions, even though it's like a small deal or a small project, it's probably the hardest portion of design because you're trying to add something and at the same time you're trying to make the finished product look at one project. You don't want to look at a house and say, oh, this was added later, and which you see all the time. Everywhere you look, I can tell you in like 2 minutes this was added later. In this house, you're not going to be able to point that. So well designed, very well done by the designer, Narek. Good job. And I tend to agree with Mr. Malikian. When I read the staff recommendation about the added another 2 feet, I was thinking this property may be sitting on the property line and it's going to make an impact to the mass, but then I looked at it and it's set back 30 feet. You're not going to see the 2 feet. It's 32 feet already. What is it going to be, 34? It's not going to make any difference. So I also support it as is.
You support it with the condition removed?
With the 3 conditions except for the first condition.
Okay. When I visited the site, my thinking was very much aligned with my colleagues in that the existing home looks like there was an addition, a very strange addition, like almost like something burned down and something was put back together. So I do agree that this very well thought out addition is completing the home in a very thoughtful way. As far as the 2 feet, I will defer to my colleagues on that and entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the project with the 3 conditions except for the first condition.
I'll second that.
So I want clarification on that, Mr. Bellion, just to make sure. Let's have Mr. Platt read the 2 conditions that would then be applicable.
I think it's 3 conditions.
There's 3 conditions.
It's 4 total.
There's a 4 total.
We're eliminating the condition about the second floor mass. I've lost.
I'm glad
I've lost my page.
2 conditions.
Yeah. Okay, we'll delete condition 1. We'll maintain condition 2 about the driveway gate width conforming to the 9-foot driveway. Okay. Condition 3 is about including the concrete brick driveway drawn on the landscape plan. Will go on the site plan also for consistency. And finally, the front yard landscaping will conform with the drought-tolerant plants that the city is requiring of all property owners.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, this will be roll call. So I have a motion by Board Member Benlian and a second by Board Member Milliken. This is roll call. Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
Board Member Malakian?
Yes.
Mr. Chair Charchian?
Chairperson Charchian, yes.
Oh.
For the record.
We have approval 3-0. Thank you.
Okay.
Bring it on.
You people, the people in gallery are free to leave. I don't see any
We have no minutes tonight,
to
Mr.
approve,
Chairman.
so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
And we'll adjourn. Thank you.